so much for having me on. I'm delighted. Suha Deeb, and I'm a femininity mentor and self-concept coach. I'm mainly working with the daughters of dysfunctional parents. And yeah, I can't wait to explore certain topics with you here today.
Yeah, so most of the guests that I have on, I usually know them in real life because I've met them through Party of Women or Let Women Speak or something else like business. But we've never met. We've just met a few minutes ago because I put a little post on Facebook and he responded to it. And it's really good to have you here, particularly because you're living in Egypt. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I'm
Yeah.
originally Lebanese, but I'm living in Egypt and I love it here. So very grateful to be here.
Right. That's somewhere I've never been, but I'd love to go.
You should make it out here one day.
Yeah. Do you know when I was a little girl, they showed the Tutankhamun's treasures in a museum in
Mhm.
Edinburgh. I went with the school and I really liked that. We learnt about Egypt for ages. So, yes, there's lots of interesting things in Egypt, isn't there? Anyway, so you work with women and you've just been telling me a little bit before we started about some of the work that you do. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. So initially, actually, before I started working with women, my introduction into counseling was through being a substance abuse counselor for young men. I work exclusively with women of all ages, and I've noticed that, in addition to, I suppose, helping them recover trauma and especially the legacy of traumatic childhood, I've noticed that a lot of women are extremely confused. Things that have become normalized in popular culture, they don't always realize it's something that's feeding into anxious attachment. So, when we talk about anxious attachment style, yes, you can talk about abandonment wounds and being neglected as a child and chasing love. But then, there's also so much societal expectation on women. We're still seen as less, if not paired up. There's still a lot of taunt, in red pill podcasts. But I mean, even outside of that kind of red pill, it's just so normal to taunt women. And so this kind of feeds into urgency and desperation that women feel in finding a relationship. So I like to really unpack with them the things that are affecting them in addition to or other than their childhoods, because really the pressure is quite extraordinary. And just before we hit the live button, we were also talking about things like porn addiction in men, how that's also affecting women. Those kind of expectations on women to act like it's normal, like they're cool with it, like they're supposed to think it's sexy or there's something wrong with them. So anyone following me knows that I also talk about the external culture as well as the childhood stuff, because you can't really separate them. We live in the world, and yeah, it's affecting women.
Definitely, and I've talked before on the podcast about how porn, you used to have to go to a shop. It might be on the top shelf, you had to go out of your way to buy porn. Now, like anybody can access it anytime they want to because we've got this little phone that we keep in the back pocket or in our bags. But obviously for men, they would keep it in their back pocket, wouldn't they? Whereas so it's just too easy and I've heard women say that they've seen men watching porn on public transport, which just horrifies me. And like I can't imagine what it's like trying to find a partner in this kind of situation because I've been with my husband for 20 years and we met at work. So I've never really used dating sites or anything like that, and it just sounds horrific.
It is terrific. I mean, you've got the red pill podcasts where, I mean, I think maybe about 15 or 20 years ago, you had the pickup artist type of content. I feel like that was maybe predecessor to a lot of the red pill podcasts. So the pickup artist was kind of dating tips for men, but in a really poisonous way, which is to, chip away at a woman's self-esteem to make her more pliable, to make her more,
Right.
so it's very toxic.
Yeah.
You know,
What do you
because
mean
I mean,
red pill podcasts? I've not come across that before.
so red pill, this is a whole, like if you know about alpha males or self-described alpha males. So it's a broad umbrella term, but you guess Andrew Tate is someone
Right.
who would be called red pill. I think he fits under that, heading. So it's that kind of. I think it's this. It's machismo. I think I heard someone describe it. May have been Will Nolan describe machismo as masculinity without the chivalry. And so
Right.
you can see you can see and hear the contemptuous way in which women are talked about. So they might be, they think they're promoting masculinity, but it's quite juvenile. It lacks empathy towards women. There's also like this large podcast, really popular podcasts that are all about humbling women, putting women in their place. And I mean, I think that's nothing new. I think that's just technology has given rise to these, because I mean, what's new? What's new? Like, it's just one way to control women, beat them down, make them more accessible to, I would say lower quality, right? Because I think why else would you want to crush a woman's self-esteem? Why else do you want to belittle her? If a man actually rises into healthy masculinity, which is about responsibility and being solid and being that dependable, reliable, mature, operative type of man, you're not really going to have I mean, women seek that out. You're not going to have problems. So, but I think, that a lot of these podcasts that are devoted to humbling women, checking them, putting them in their place, it's for men who just refuse to do the work. That's a problem. And you're a therapist, Kelly. You know that women are the ones who go into therapy. They're likely to get counseling. I do sometimes still work with men. They come to me by referral, but I found women are a lot more willing and receptive to come in and heal. And this has created a gap.
Yeah, definitely. But I think in our, I don't know what it's like where you live, but I think in Western, like where I'm from, like a lot of men are sort of feminized as well. So I've got a 28-year-old son, so he feels very much like he grew up with all these female teachers, and there were like he felt like there was a lack of masculine role models for him. So so he's quite resentful of feminism, and I've tried to explain to him why it exists and why we need feminism, but I don't think he gets it yet. Maybe I'll get through to him at some point and he'll realize. But yeah, it's difficult. I can see it from
Is
his point of view as well.
I can too, Kelly. I think, I was reading somewhere that in China they actually have these, like masculinity camps.
Mhm.
And, because I do think that men do need to at some point be separated from the girls and the women in order to be initiated into manhood, to learn courage, bravery, responsibility. These are the things that make them, that give them a purpose, and that also makes them feel valuable.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
I also do think that men, I think maybe a lot of this red pill stuff is a bit of a backlash, because yes, there has been an effeminization of men. I can see the way that, it's so interesting. See, like, I think the initial, that if men become more feminine, that's going to make them safer. I actually think it makes them more resentful. And then if you look at studies, for example, where, you have the woman earns more than her husband, she's actually more at risk of intimate partner violence. Like, role reversal doesn't protect women, I think, the way that some feminists thought it would. Like, if we just make everybody the same, but we're not either. This is the thing. It's about, we should be valued for our differences, for the things that make us women, for the things that make men. So I really do see how a lack of positive male role models has an on
As
growing
well in
boys.
schools, I'm just thinking, like in schools, the things that are good for boys, it's like rough play and competition, and they're getting rid of all
Yeah.
of that. They don't want them to have that rough play, and they don't that even in sports days and things like that, they're just not encouraged to compete. It's like, oh, everybody's a winner, or they'll compete in teams with a mix of boys and girls of different abilities. So, and they don't celebrate winning, which is really important for boys and men.
Extremely. I don't know where I heard this, but I may be wrong. Okay, so but he said that manhood is something that's achieved. It's not just that you hit puberty and that's what makes you man. It really is something that is achieved, and that's why in so many cultures you have the rites of passage, right? And even things like Boy Scouts, I think these are so important when they get to learn so many skills and purpose and courage.
And society's kind of mixing boys and so have they started letting girls into the scouts and boys into the brownies and stuff like that, and they
We need
need separate
separate
spaces,
spaces.
don't they? I'm
Absolutely.
all for equality of opportunity, but at the same time you need to have like separate spaces for boys and girls.
I absolutely agree, Kelly. Absolutely agree. So, I know that this has become a very contentious topic in the West. Yeah, the idea of like everything needing to be inclusive. But see, exclusivity isn't something bad. Exclusivity is sometimes really important to create a certain environment. So, for example, I live here, and I have to say that I really love having the option to go on a subway carriage that's just for women. I really love that. I don't feel that diminishes me. I don't want to be squeezed up against men I don't know for a subway ride. So this is a good thing. And yeah, likewise for boys, when you have girls, I remember actually, even in my experience as a substance counselor, one of the reasons that my head counselor brought me into that group of just all men, it just happened to be all young men from the ages of 18 to generally mid to late 20s, because he knew that they behave differently automatically because there's a woman present.
Yeah.
So, it has that effect. It's like, there's 12 or 15 young men in a group. The head counselor is also a man. And then me, it just changes the dynamic of the group.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And I think boys need that and men need that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd never really thought about it until quite recently when, I'm sure I was talking to someone about it and how like the older men usually pull the younger ones into line and they stop them from doing the things that they shouldn't be doing and saying, and that's what happens. But obviously I didn't know that because I'm a woman and I don't see it.
Well, actually, it reminded me of something that really opened my eyes to that when I was, working as a, substance use counselor. I remember that, the first couple of sessions were fairly smooth. Everyone was kind of on good behavior. And I remember, I think it was the third or fourth session, so kind of early into that experience for me. And I remember one guy just kept acting up. He just wouldn't cooperate. He was kind of, he was being difficult. And so I remember that the way that the head counselor checked him was extremely different to how I've done it. As women, we want to be nice, we want to be really compassionate and understanding. But what happened was, words were exchanged, and very quickly they're now standing chest to chest. And I wouldn't say it like completely got physical, but it ended up with the head counselor just kind of picking him up, bodying him out of the room, and just shutting the door. That was it. Like, you're going to be disruptive, get the hell out. He threw it up. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, I mean.
That actually happened in my primary school. It just reminded me. So in my primary, it was the last year of primary school. So I would have been about 10 or 11. And we had a male teacher. and I can't remember what he did, but one of the boys was disruptive, and the male teacher just picked him up and carried him out, and he was like thrashing and everything, and took him out of the room. And then I don't know what happened to him, but then he came back. But you wouldn't
That's
have
what
that
happened.
now. That wouldn't happen now.
Exactly. I think that surprised me. I mean, like when we were done with the session, he opened the door and the guy was standing outside waiting to apologize. You know, oh, like men really do things different.
Yeah. And I think it's this sort of way of trying to encourage men to behave like women. It's not healthy. And of course,
It's
as
not
well,
for anyone's benefit.
sorry,
I'm saying it's not one's benefits to try to encourage
no.
men to act like women.
And the other thing that's happening is that, you know, when men stick up for women, like say there's domestic violence happening in the street and the man goes over, the woman then gets upset because she doesn't want him to intervene, or, you know, or the man gets arrested. So men aren't really incentivized to play their role in society, which is to protect women and children.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the problem isn't that it's not that men need to become more feminine. I think it's just the absence of masculinity. The absence of masculinity is a problem because, you know, masculinity, it's just been kind of become attached to the word toxic, and there is toxic masculinity. Yes, there are domineering, violent, exploitative men. Yes, yes. But I mean, you know, there's so much about masculinity when boys are encouraged to, let's say, raise to see how wonderful it is to be chivalrous. You know, this is what needs to be encouraged. It's not like, oh, we need them to stop roughhousing. No, that needs to be channeled into something healthier where they can feel pride in themselves and they can feel, again, that sense of pride is really important to men.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what other experiences have you got in Egypt? Because obviously I learnt about the ancient Egyptians, but I don't really know what it's like there in modern times. I know a few people who've been there on holiday and stuff like that, but that's not really everyday life, is it?
No, it's really everyday life. I have to say, I love it. I actually, you know, there's, I think sometimes you get really kind of mixed perceptions about Egypt.
Mhm.
You know, we hear a lot about how harassment is a problem here. And yes, it is. But in my experience as a rather well-traveled woman, I don't think it's that much less than other places, you know?
Yeah.
I think in Egypt kind of idealization of the West, that because there has been feminism, that because, you know, women are not treated as objects, supposedly, that you'll experience harassment less. But, you know, I've experienced serious harassment, you know, on arrival in the UK, you know, home office creeps asking me very inappropriate questions, and you can see what it's all about. Like, this is not about security, you know, you don't need to go there, you know, just being a sleep. So what I think is that, you know, one of the things that actually balances it out here, Kelly, is what we were talking about. Actually, if a man sees a teenage boy sleazing on you or saying something inappropriate, men will step in and check them. That's the thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's
I
good.
remember, like, yeah, coming back from the supermarket the other day, and it was a little bit dark, and two, you know, they looked to be you know, maybe around 9:20, and they could see me, and they crossed the street, and they were clearly, you know, up to no good. And so there was a guy coming up behind me on a motorbike, and he slowed down, and he told them to leave me alone, and he said, "Don't be afraid."
Hmm.
And so he just kind of, you know, stayed with me a bit until he, you know, made sure that they just left and made sure I was okay, and I continued on my way home. So yeah, it's I don't know. I like being here.
That's good. Yeah, I've been to Morocco a couple of times, so I know that it's a vastly different culture, and when I first got there, I was kind of like, oh, what have I stepped into? I don't know if it's a similar culture to what it's like in Egypt, but yeah, I found that fascinating.
Yeah, how did you find that experience?
It was pretty amazing. For the first time I went to volunteer in some orphanages and schools and things like that. So yeah, it was very different. And I noticed that in Morocco, the men would just talk to children in the street, um, whereas that wouldn't happen here. Men are really worried about interacting with little children in the street.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
we
I
went to
can imagine.
one school, and one of the children, like, obviously I don't look like I'm from Morocco, so we're
No.
walking through this school ground, and obviously the children spoke French. And what did they say? They were speaking in French, saying, "Oh, madame, madame," and they came running over and kissed me, which was just, it was a really lovely experience. But I didn't know how, like, is this okay? Like, I don't think this would happen in England. I'm not really sure how to respond. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to go with it and interact with them because that's what they want to do. So yeah, I had a little hug with this little kid, and then we went in and did some crafts. Just totally
Well, that
different
sounds,
culture.
yeah, yes, yeah. That's one thing that I really love about Egypt. It's the warmth. People do look out for one another. So again, it's not like you don't have creeps and degenerates. They exist in every corner of the world. But the
Of
thing is, like
course.
here, that you feel, for example, my neighbors, they know that I live by myself, and so they look out for me. It's again just that chivalry and sense of community is still in place, and it just makes life so much easier. You feel cared for. It's
Yeah,
lovely.
that's good. Yeah. So before we came on, you were talking about feminism and how it's kind of damaged women as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Do I ever?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I exactly what before we came on air is that I was saying that in my work, my written content, I've been quite critical of Western feminism because of how I feel that it's working at, in the way that porn is promoted, hookup culture, the way that you can't really have a reasonable discussion with young women without being accused of slut shaming, for example. And I feel that this has just become such a knee-jerk response to just even advising young women that casual sex doesn't benefit them. That's a very different thing to shame for their past choices. I
Yeah.
believe that everyone deserves compassion, because this is actually how you heal. This is actually how you can change your ways. As someone saying, "Hey, I'm not judging. It's okay." We also have to recognize that this thing has been hurting you, and maybe let's try another way.
Yeah.
So you just feel like real conversations are being shut down with this, again, this knee-jerk silencing of women, which is bizarre because isn't feminism supposed to give women more of a voice?
Absolutely. I think we've been sold a lie, actually. So when I was growing up, it was like, female empowerment and, oh, you can do what you like. And there was a bit about, the Spice Girls and that ladette culture where you can just behave like a man and do whatever you want. But actually, that is not how women work. Like, men and women are totally different in that sense. Women need and feel an emotional connection when they have sex with men, whereas men don't. And young women aren't really, we're not told that. So, you know,
And
you have to
you know,
learn that, don't you?
women, absolutely, also women incur most of the risk.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lady actually I'd like to introduce you to. Her name is Reed Pearson. She might be really great, but she teenage girls on how to recognize the first signs of relationship abuse. These are really
I know
important
Ray.
conversations. Yeah. Oh, you know her. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What a
So,
coincidence.
what a coincidence.
She
Not
actually lives
surprisingly,
about 4 streets away from me.
Oh wow. Small world. So, but yeah, I was talking about how hookup culture, like not only, actually, I don't think it benefits men. I'm going to talk about how it doesn't really benefit
It
men.
doesn't, but they think that it does.
But they think it does, but it definitely harms women, not just on the emotional side, but also, the risk, because of the way, parts are designed. We're much more likely to catch something, more likely to be exposed to violence. Girls go missing. So I mean, so to quote Reed, she just said, if I'm allowed to drop an F-bomb, she said, like, effing people that you don't know is just dangerous. And it just is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy to pretend otherwise. So yeah, and that's how I'm talking about anxious attachment and how there's external factors that feed into that. Hookup culture is one of those things. You see, you have a lot of women thinking that they're needy, or they get pushed into this very needy chasing behavior because they bond with someone, and then what they're seeking is a relationship, and then they get accused of needy. Just think there needs to be a sensible order restored, which is that get to know someone, get to know their intentions. Who are they as a person? Observe them. How do they treat you? How do they treat others? Right? Because some men initially, if they want to have sex with a woman, they can put on a really charming act. So just slow things down, because you will see how they treat people they don't want to have. So it's really, really important to take things slowly. And I'm a big proponent of, like, let's bring back courtship. I think abstinence is really empowering. That's the real empowerment. The real empowerment is that this is something that's really special access to me. This is the most special kind of access. Who the hell are you that you should be granted this access, and all the risk that I'm going to incur by granting you this access because of empowerment? I mean, I just feel that things are just, it's bizarro land. Things have been flipped upside down.
Definitely. So really, women have been encouraging other women to do things that aren't in their interest, but are in the interests of men, or that they like men think that what men want, basically, it may not be in their interest, but
it isn't actually. I don't know if you've heard of this. He was very famous in the initial pickup movement. He was like a big name in the pickup. He had a lot of men following him. His tips about negging. I don't know this term, but negging is when you cut a woman down. You kind of insult her in subtle ways, again, to make her more pliable. It's a very predatory and very contemptuous method for dating, if you call it that. But so he said that he says he's reformed now. He's found clarity, and his mental state at the time. He would just go to clubs, because that's what it was about. You just go to the club, you hit on the drunk, insecure girls, you make them feel even more insecure and off balance, and they're more likely to sleep with you. And yes, that works on wounded women. Women very confident in themselves. Sure, that will work. They will chase your validation. So he said actually had not only contempt for those women, but how he felt so much loathing for himself. And bleak and depressing it all was. And he would say how, he would pick up these women from the club and take them home, and he just couldn't wait for her to leave, because whether you're a man, it's a deeply intimate act. And so, yes, well, women do bond emotionally more quickly, and I think, maybe young men can go through this proven to others, especially with this rather egging on by their peers of, the whole is a goal. I don't know if you've heard that expression, but so men feel like if it's on offer, they have to take it, or it's on with them. But currently, I'm actually working with a couple of men in one-to-one, and they speak about this loneliness. They're also actually craving romance. So I think there needs to be sex needs to be restored to, it's not this cheap activity. It's not this, I think casual sex is an oxymoron. There's nothing casual about it.
Yeah.
So this is why I think it should be restored. This is not about going back to, prude ways and, no, that's not what I'm saying, but sex is so significant. It's so significant. That's why we regulate sex. Right? This is why sex has to be regulated in the workplace. This is why there's so many rules around it, because it's not a casual thing. And people get hurt. The women more, and in other ways, but the men also. Eventually, that cavalier attitude to something that's so important. I mean, this is the most intimate thing you can do with another human being. It just has a very profound effect on everybody to be frivolous about it.
Definitely. Yeah. Couldn't have put it better myself. That's really interesting that you're meeting men who are feeling the same. Because, sex is everywhere. And like I said before, it's in your back pocket for whenever you want to view it. It's become too accessible. And then it's changing the expectations of like men and women, isn't it? That's what I'm hearing in young women. They are feeling like they have to do things that they don't want to.
Absolutely. I actually, in my private group, I did, we have questions about sex and sexuality, and we were talking about how, there's so many women who are pressured by porn addicted partners to consume porn with them. But also, I've worked in who felt really hurt by the husband's porn consumption, because they talk about how the man isn't really connecting with them in bed. He's trying to get her to replay scenes. There's a lot of pressure on women to feel that like choking is sexy, or that anal sex is sexy. And they really don't want to do those things. But again, it's just been really normalized. And so I tell women, like, listen, in my opinion, I think porn addiction is a mental illness. Go get help, please. If you are watching pornography on public transportation, you're leaving, because this is something that one lady talked about. Her husband would just keep going to the bathroom to watch porn and so this is someone who's mentally ill. They need help. Okay, they need help. So your mental health as a woman shouldn't have to suffer because of his mental illness, because of his compulsive behavior. So this is the thing. But I think we were saying this before we went on air, which is that, you see women posting in these relationship advice groups that they're upset that their husband's a porn addict. So many women, more women than not, will tell her that it can be sexy if they work it into their foreplay, that you're open-minded, or, like she should be more sex positive. And I'm like, what?
And it's always about women lowering the boundaries.
Exactly.
Rather than encouraging women to have healthy boundaries.
Encouraging women to have healthy boundaries and men elevate their behavior.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. This is the idea that, this doesn't benefit men. It's like, why has the standard become the behavior of the degenerate man? The unhealthy masculine, the one who consumes porn, the one who sleeps around. This is not healthy masculinity. And the reason the men who come to me are talking about the loneliness is because they are trying to elevate. They've understood they're lonely, they're unhappy. It doesn't make them feel good. One guy was telling me about how he notices that when he calls someone to just have a hookup, it's always when he's feeling depressed and lonely. Mm-hmm. So it's a way of self-soothing. That's not very sexy. And then I it's also not fair, but this does happen. It's not fair when men use women to numb and avoid emotion. So
Definitely.
there's a really dark side to hookup culture and casual sex, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm a right prude when I talk about issues like this, but somebody's got to, and it's, I'm 47, and it's always been older women in society who've called out society and held them to account, and so I guess I'm in that age group now where that's my role.
Kelly, how do those conversations land when you try to talk to women about, sharing your perspective? And I know I've been, I've had knee-jerk reactions on my Facebook profile from liberal feminists, I think, or woke feminists, because again, they immediately assume that you are a prude or conservative. Conservative doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. Plenty of liberals doing really crazy and harmful stuff. So,
Yeah.
but it's like,
I tend not to talk about porn and sex on social media. Well, although I do sometimes on Twitter, but it tends to be women who think like me. So it's often, I don't often get into a conversation with women who don't think like me in that way, because obviously in the counselling room, you kind of keep yourself, it's about that person who you're working with. And then sort of all the women who are around me, they know what the issues are and they get it.
yeah.
And this is the whole trans thing as well, it's porn addiction and fetishes in men, and that's what's leading to all of that stuff coming into society as well.
It's really interesting that you say that, Kelly. Actually, after this podcast, I'm going to see if I can find that interview with Bruce V, that pickup artist. And he was saying how, yes, it created a numbing, using women like that. It created a numbing in him that he admitted that it can lead to homosexuality because you are no longer that excited about women. I mean, just him
Yeah.
giving that
So
feedback.
this is what I'm hearing about porn and like AGPs. I don't know if you've come across that term. Most people who I speak to do know what an autogynephile is, but so basically they start watching porn and then they have to watch more and more extreme porn to get the same response. And then there's this thing called sissy porn. I don't know if you've come across this. Sissy porn is kind of, I mean, I haven't looked into it. It sounds horrific, but it uses hypnotic techniques. And then the men, they fantasize about being a woman and like sort of being submissive and all the horrible stuff that we actually don't like. So it is linked to this porn culture.
Oh, absolutely. Because you said, Kelly, I mean, things need to escalate. I mean, as you said before, I think in the 70s or 80s, if a guy wanted to get a glimpse of a naked woman, yes, it'd be a magazine on the top shelf, or someone boy from underneath their uncle's mattress or something to have a sneaky peek. But again, now we're bombarded with thousands of images and thousands of types accessible on your mobile phone. This is really just distorting how men, it is distorting men's sexuality, because now it's not just enough to see a naked woman or a naked man and a woman, and really how natural is it to be a voyeur, be looking at others. I think this is not normal. That can't be good for you. This is a very private act. So it puts you in that role of the voyeur. And then it becomes on one women and gangbangs and, again, just the escalation where, because the directors, if we can call them that, of pornography, they know they're just going to have to keep upping the ante in terms of titillation, usually humiliation of women,
Yeah,
So
and I've heard about I think it's the owners of Pornhub or someone in charge. They've actually said that they seek to encourage young people to watch their channel because it'll get more views. They encourage them to watch more extreme porn, and I think there was something about the trans as well. They were encouraging, they wanted people to be consuming that sort of content. And apparently, I have heard a statistic, although I can't remember where I heard it, so don't ask me to back it up. But it's an interesting anecdote that is one of the most searched terms on Pornhub is trans
Is it?
porn. Yeah, it
That's
is a
interesting.
category
Mm,
in itself,
yeah.
and apparently it gets a lot of views, which just I don't understand that at all. I find that quite extreme.
It is extreme, Kelly, you know, and speaking of extreme empowerment, I really feel that like women need to take back that word, because I feel that a lot of stuff is being called empowering to women when it's actually
When
not.
it's not.
But I remember, you know, watching this interview, and I don't remember her name, of a woman who worked in porn as an actress, and she was saying, you know, she did it for the money, and she was one of the very lucky, highly paid ones, because a lot of
Yeah.
it's a very exploited industry, right? But she was one of the, let's say, few actresses who commanded quite a high fee. And she was saying how this kind of empowered her, but then she also said how she got really good at dissociating when she was performing. And I'm thinking, dissociation is actually, that's a trauma response, darling. Like, you might be getting money for this, but that's
Absolutely.
PTSD. You're
Yeah.
traumatized. That's why you need
Yeah.
to check out mentally.
And OnlyFans is being normalized as like this is a career choice for young people. Also, did you hear about the woman who was going to have sex with 1,000 men in a day to try and break some sort of record? Did you hear
But
about
why?
that? Just
It begs the question, why? You know?
mhm.
And you know what, Kelly? Like, one of the things that I've you know said in one of my live videos on Facebook to women, you know, this idea that it's really empowering to go out and have sex. First of all, what's the power? All you need to do is be female and willing, and you will, if you just step outside, guaranteed you can flag down someone willing. So it's not that difficult if you have no standard,
No.
no thoughts to your safety, no other considerations. You just want to have sex. Guess what? You can just trip out your front door and be having sex with some rando in 5 minutes. So again, you know, this idea that it's just empowering to have sex with 1,000 guys,
It's
and
just not, is it?
it's just not.
I just
It
don't
isn't.
I can't get my head round why anybody would want to do that.
Exactly. What's the purpose of this endeavor? And you know, I think, Kelly, like, instead of always trying to justify degeneracy and frame it as empowerment, I really think that we need to just start having much more elevated conversations about sex and pornography. And it's okay to call stuff degenerate if that's what it is. You know, it's just
Definitely.
harmful. It's harming women. It serves no higher purpose at all.
And it doesn't
So
even
it's
benefit men.
at all, you know?
And it as well,
So,
like with this porn that's everywhere, like it's far too easy for children to access it as well. Like that's really worrying as well. If you've got small children, like how do you stop them? Given that everything's on the internet, even their like homework, how do you stop your child from, there are like those, I don't know what, like things that you can get to stop them watching inappropriate stuff, but all you have to do I mean, you probably just misspell it or something like that. If they really want to access it, they probably can.
oh yes, and
It's
actually,
really
Kelly, they
worrying.
do. I had a very interesting interview with a gentleman called Matt Sinkowitz, and he's the founder of something called pornus, and he talks about his own porn addiction, and when that began, I think he was 9 years old. You know, we
9.
don't like
Goodness.
to boys that age, but I mean, it's very easy for them to find, you know, to get them. We spoke about that. He spoke about how it just becomes really, really difficult because he works with men who are overcoming porn addiction. They talk about how it's just no longer thrilling to be with a woman. It's no longer thrilling. It's no longer to just be with a naked woman. They become so desensitized, you know. And part of the, you know, I asked, you know, a guy desensitizing us, you know, and he said, absolutely. I mean, it takes, you know, abstinence. You can't be consuming porn and still expect to connect in a profound or meaningful or emotional way with a woman, or even just find this live human being exciting, right? So it's definitely very damaging to everyone.
And yet we've got loads of it. I really don't know how they put that genie back in the bottle though. With porn, I mean, I don't think there's the will from enough people who would have the power to stop it, because it's driven by money, isn't it? And power. I don't think there's the will to stop it, so it's really worrying.
Yeah, I think how one can counter it, Kelly, is again through proper sex education. Again, like I said, elevating status of sex again. You know, like you said, if someone's really determined and they want to go some naked pictures or find some, you know, pornographic videos, they can. There's an absence. Not only is there an absence of conversation about really healthy sexuality. It's just this anything goes is really promoted. And I think, okay, freedom. If freedom is your ultimate value, okay, so what? I can have the freedom to shoot up heroin. I can have what does it mean to have freedom?
Yeah.
It's necessary for some things to be off limits. It's necessary for some things to be seen as, oh, cross the line there, let's get you some help, you know?
I suppose it was religion that used to keep us in line, isn't it? And we haven't got that as much in, you know, certainly in the UK and in Western cultures. Religions kind of took a back seat, and this is what it's been replaced with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a lack of accountability coupled with, you know, placing oneself and one's desires and whims as just that's
The most important thing.
The most important thing, exactly, is that I indulge myself.
I've got rights, but without thinking about what the responsibilities are that go with those rights.
Exactly, and the consequences. You know, there's consequences to this. So yes, you know, let's say you have the freedom to go and eat whatever you want. Does that mean that you should? You have the freedom to go down to the pub and drink as much. Does that mean that you should? No. So, but again, this idea of, you know, you also have people who react, I think, really badly when they feel that you're going to infringe on that freedom. Again, even if you're trying to give young women good advice, I've had women accuse me of slut shaming. I'm like, but I did not do that. I didn't condemn anyone for their actions. I'm just saying, you're betraying yourself. When you engage in casual sex, you're putting yourself at risk. It's not really what you want. It's not. I'm sorry. You go on relationship groups. You have these massive groups on Facebook, and you can see the pain, the anguish in these women who say that, oh, I slept with this guy on the first date or the second date, and they are just so triggered by rejection or the perceived rejection. So it's like, can we just again remind women that it doesn't feel good to you, that you shouldn't just be thinking about, oh, I'm just going to get off with this person and walk away from this interaction and it's not going to affect me. And if you do get to that point where it's not affecting, there's also something wrong there, which is that you've disconnected from the act, you've disconnected from yourself in some way. So, but yeah, I mean, I see it all the time where these women are in deep emotional pain. they bonded with someone, he ghosts them or he blocks them, or wham bam, thank you ma'am type of thing. But she wants more. She wants affection. She wants intimacy. She wants a relationship to come out of this. And then what you'll see, Kelly, is that you'll have some women say that, oh, but I'm with my long-term boyfriend and we had sex on the first date. Okay, that was a risk that you took. It was still a gamble. Just because it worked out for you, it doesn't mean that this should be the norm.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we do need to have those conversations, actually. I think it's something that we need to talk about a lot more.
Well, what's going on in the UK, Kelly, with regards to that? I mean, are there any initiatives, talking to teenage girls, to young women about sex in a healthy way, not just this like,
Not that I
freedom?
know of. I mean, like all the things that sort of that I hear about are that there's this push in schools to talk about sex inappropriately and introducing like too much detail to children when they're too young, and that I think is the danger at the moment. And everything is influenced by this woke, so it's critical race theory and it's the trans and LGBTQ whatever, but actually everything after the T is really unhealthy and questionable. Why would you want to influence children that they've been born in the wrong body, or they're somehow not perfect as they are? And then some of the other stuff that comes after the T is, I think the plus is, one of the pluses is MAPS. So that's minor attracted people. So there's pedophiles. They're pushing for the normality of pedophilia. So, this is what is this is the concern of the women who I'm talking to. And, when you break down boundaries of young girls, and what I'm hearing is that there's now mixed toilets, so the toilets have boys and girls in them. When you're breaking down the barriers of young girls and you're telling them that and this is what I've heard them say, some trans people, when they say they don't want to see male genitalia in their spaces, oh well, they're a pervert. I'm like, what? Well, you shouldn't be in there and you shouldn't be getting it out. So that is the boundaries are being broken down, and it's not healthy. This is being normalized. And when you get men who say they feel like a woman and they want to be included as a woman, so it's normal for men to go into women's toilets and women's changing rooms and stuff like that, then that's going to attract pedophiles, whether all of those men who feel like women are pedophiles or not. It's gonna open the door for that.
Yeah, I mean, Kelly, it's dangerous. I've there are lots of stories that I think get downplayed in the news because, again, maybe fear of being cancelled or something. But as a therapist, you know that boundaries are really important. Boundaries are there to protect people. They're there to protect the vulnerable.
Absolutely. Well, they're there to protect. Everybody should have healthy boundaries. And that's what we teach our clients, isn't it? To have healthy boundaries. But I mean, even therapists, they are affirming all this stuff. I mean, when I trained, it was all about gentle challenging and getting them to reframe what they're seeing. And therapists now are affirming confused children, but that sends them down a pathway of medical intervention and possibly surgery and sterilization. It's really worrying.
It's extremely worrying, Kelly, and I think therapists are supposed to be a safe space or providers of a safe space, but I've spoken to clients who've been gaslighted by therapists. I remember seeing this because they're woke. I remember seeing this show on Channel 4 where this couple was encouraged to open up marriage, and the woman basically had watched her husband have sex with another woman, and she was so upset, triggered. And this therapist was making the woman feel there was something wrong with her for being triggered. And I'm thinking, why is this even a conversation that she's deeply upset and wounded by seeing her husband have sex with another woman? So this is, you see how this lunacy has infiltrated, like you said, it's a profession where, yes, you're supposed to gently challenge people, hold them account, provide that space, but it's like there are agendas that are being pushed. And so
Definitely.
and imagine how extra traumatizing that is to be gaslighted by a therapist telling you that there's something wrong with you for not wanting to open up your mind. There's something wrong with you because you're upset watching your husband have sex with another woman. So I don't know where these people are coming from. I don't know who's giving them lice, but they're contributing to the damage.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a solution, but I know what the problems are.
But it's important, talking, I think, is maybe it's not finding a solution, but so many people, I know that people who have, found me on Facebook, found my content, they felt validated because someone's saying it, So I think maybe we're not going to fix things in this instant. If you have a platform or you reach someone who just needed to feel, oh, thank God, I'm not insane. I didn't want to have an open marriage. I didn't want to be polyamorous or whatever. That no, it's okay. You're not a prude. That's how you feel. Those are your requirements for wanting to be in a relationship. That's what makes you feel safe. Don't accept anything that's not that.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that I've been doing is having conversations, even if it's just one person at a time. But then you can reach people who might not be aware of what's going on. So if the viewers, sorry.
No, what I'm saying is it also causes a ripple effect, Kelly. Like you speak to that one person, that one person, she'll explain
Speak to someone
to her
else.
daughter.
Definitely.
Because anyway, how did we get here in the first place? There were individuals who became organizations who started chipping away at everything,
Definitely.
And so the way to push back is to speak up, and Keane says it's like to let women speak is very powerful because women are being affected. Yeah, it's
really, really powerful. So if the viewers want to find you on the internet, where should they look?
They can find me on Facebook. They can find my public profile. I post live videos, written content, and they're welcome to join my private Facebook group, which is called The Feminine Woman. I can post links. I can send you the links.
Yeah. Send me the links and I'll put them in the comment. And I'm going to check out all your content as well because I haven't discovered you yet until we had this conversation. So I'm really interested to find out more about what you do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on to my podcast. It's been lovely. Well, I don't know.
Likewise.
The conversation's been quite heavy though, hasn't it?
I mean, okay, it's just what came up.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for being on my podcast.